This is another in our series of misleading charts and misleading information. Right now, the farmers' agitation is going on. I don't have any opinion much in terms of support or opposed to it. But yesterday, Mr. Salman Anis Source tweeted out this chart in Twitter, and he basically says, according to OECD data, on 54 of the biggest economies, India's support for farmers is among the lowest in the world. Only Argentina and Vietnam do less for their farmers. Agriculture needs more support, not less. Kisan nahi to desh nahi. And Mr. Salman is a politics and economics author, commentator. He's ex-World Bank. He is associated with the Indian National Congress, I think. And here is a chart actually, and you can see from the chart that what he's saying is actually true. India has there is a index called Producer Support Estimate from OECD, which says that India's support for farming, agriculture sector, is in terms of these countries. So this data is accurate. It does say that this is -5. The definition, OECD definition of producer support estimate, PSE, is the annual monetary value of gross transfers from consumers and taxpayers to support agriculture producers measured at farm gate level, regardless of their nature, objectives or impact. So it's in essential what is the support that the Indian government and consumers provide to the farming sector, including taxpayer support, is what it measures. And this you can see it is -5. Before we go into why this may be misleading, let us first understand that Yogendra Yadav, Mr. Yogendra Yadav, retweeted this, and he's presumably in support of this chart and OECD's, he endorses the OECD's estimates, is what you should take it. Before we go further, let us first take a look at where what the producer support estimate. OECD has an actual chart from 2000 to 2019 in various countries. So this is the chart, and I have highlighted the red line is the highlight for India. And this chart actually shows that starting in 2000, when they changed the measure, they started measuring it, it has been substantially lower than -5 actually. It went up to -25 in 2014-16, and it kept going down and down until it started recovering, and now it is at -5, which is actually somewhat okay compared to where it was in 2012-13. The producer support estimate is actually made up of a couple of components. One is budgetary support for farming, input subsidies such as for fertilizer, seeds, etc., and it also electricity, etc., and it also includes market support prices. So in terms of market support, what do farmers get from the government and the taxpayers? Now, before you go along, we just need to understand one thing. Mr. Yogendra Yadav has retweeted this. Mr. Salman Anis has mentioned this chart. So you would think that they kind of understand where the OECD is going with this. But what is the OECD actually saying about this? The OECD produced its Trade and Agricultural Directorate, Committee for Agriculture, produced a document back in 2018, dated 4th July 2018, saying review of agricultural policies in India. And it actually covers some of this. Let us take a look at page 13 of this document. It says together they generate a negative producer support estimate, which needs careful interpretation because it is composed of both positive and negative elements. India contrasts, it says, the document says, India contrasts with most other countries studied by OECD because of the prevalence of negative market price support and its size. In the 2000 to 2016 period, producer prices were very low. The document says this market support prices. Why were they low? The document says this is partly policy induced and partly related to other inefficiencies in the marketing chain. And it mentions policies that govern the marketing of agricultural commodities in India include the Essential Commodities Act and the Agricultural Produce Market Committee Acts, APMCs. Through these acts, Producer prices are affected by regulations influencing pricing, procuring, stocking and trading commodities. Restrictions stemming from both the ECA and APMC Acts also deter private sector investment in marketing infrastructure. In effect, what this document is saying is that the market price support in India is low and it's negative because of policies such as those existing right now in the form of the APMC support and the Essentially Commodities Act, and it recommends private investment in the marketing infrastructure and liberalizing it. The document goes on to say the sum of all agriculture and food related spending, that is budgetary transfers to producers, to agriculture as a whole and transfers to consumers from taxpayers without accounting for the negative market price support, amounts to 1.9% of India's GDP. This shows the high cost to the Indian economy and contrasts with the sector's poor performance in productivity growth, highlighting the need for resources to be applied more effectively. This is what the OECD document says. And you will be surprised to know that this document actually proceeds to show, to discuss the APMCs and the market support prices in some detail, and it essentially says that one of its recommendations is that the central government, this document was back in 2018, and it says the central government could work closely with the states and union territories to thoroughly reform regulations to foster the development of more efficient and competitive markets. First and foremost, efforts to deploy and implement reforms already designed, such as the new Model APMC Act. In 2017, the central government had passed the Model APMC Act, which was opposed, we should remember, by Mr.Yogendra Yadav and others, who is now retweeting the OECD chart. And it says could be reinforced, including inter alia, the rationalization of levies and fees and the reduction of red tape. States should be encouraged to avoid cherry picking. So this document is actually something that the government of India is taking seriously. And if you look at it, it essentially explains, it talks about the Model Act, and you can basically say that this document is influencing the way the government of India is implementing reforms in the farming sector. And so it appears that this document is actually in supportive of the new farm bills. In effect, the new farm bill fight, a lot of it has been about the APMCs, and this document essentially says that the Indian government is following, what the Indian government is following. So the question is, what this chart reflects is that the -5 value is accurate, but farmers do need more support, as India's support for farmers is among the lowest in the world, true. But what is the way out of this? The recommendation by OECD itself is what the government of India appears to be following, and it's not clear whether Mr. Salman and his source and Yogendra Yadav are actually in support of the new farm laws or they're opposing it. They just looked at this chart and they just sent it out without noting that this document is basically a part of an entire set of documents prepared by OECD, which are recommending which is culmination is the new farm laws. Again, I'm not saying that the new farm laws are good or bad. I'm just saying that this is misleading when you show this as -5 and say that India's support for farmers, what you are thinking is let us give more subsidies. But that's not what this document is saying. This document is essentially supporting the government's position, which is that it needs reforms in agriculture. So again, this is one more example that tweeting out charts and reading and comparisons from them do not give the full picture. 1.9% of India's GDP is spent to support the farming sector, and that's a lot, and it should be more efficiently spent is the point of OECD. And instead of mentioning that, to say blankly India's support for farmers is among the lowest in the world does not capture the full nuance is the point of this. Thank you.